My name is Daniel Schreiber, and I have the honor really to host today's talk with Sislej Xhafa. You've all seen the exhibition by now, and you will have another chance to have a closer look at it later. Can you understand me all right? It's a funny sound. Yeah, and I found the exhibition incredibly thought-provoking and enigmatic. I'm especially happy that we have the chance to talk about it because I believe that these works need to be talked about and that they deserve to be continued in conversation, if you will. And I think it's in many ways it's sort of the engagement of the viewer with these works, like through talking to their friends, through talking to acquaintances, to other people, to strangers, is really, their reason for being. But let me introduce you first to Sislej Xhafa. Sislej was born in 1970 in what used to be Yugoslavia and what is today the Republic of Kosovo. With 21, he left for England, where he studied at the Chelsea College of Art and Design. After 2 years in London, I think, you moved to Florence, where you studied at the Accademia delle Belle Arti. And since 2000, you've been living in Brooklyn, I think, right? And his conceptual practice is politically and socially charged, and it draws on a multiple of mediums. You see the installations, of course, here, very often using ready-mades and or found objects. But he's also known for performances, for drawing, sometimes even for film, for site-specific interventions. And I tried, Sislej, when I prepared this talk, I tried to find a good description of the works, or of your practice. And I found it incredibly difficult. And I thought that actually might be a good starting point for our conversation. Because for me, your work possesses a really haunting quality that is hard to describe. It deals with forms of belonging, with the positive and negative aspects of globalization, with principles of inclusion and exclusion in today's society, with immigration, with social injustices. But it does so in a way that is never overtly political. You seem to act more through a combination of emotion and critique, of humor and poetry, nostalgia sometimes, and revolt. And I was wondering, how important is it to you that you cannot decode your works, that there's always a mystery to them?
First, thank you for being, and thank you for coming. Daniel, I don't think what I do. I don't think at all, because if I will think, I'll never do. Mm-hmm. To me, it's more question myself and I do believe that sensibility change every second. When I think about my practice, I even have rejection towards my pieces that I did in the past, because they don't belong to me anymore. Mm-hmm. And I try to challenge myself in terms that I can destroy the same idea and restarting from new one as well, till when that process becomes something magic as an experience with audience. Because to me, art, it's about democracy.
Democracy.
Yeah, it's only form that remain today. It's art. It's literature. It's a film. Mm-hmm. It's visual art. Because that gives some solitary way of questioning ourselves with our sensitivity with the piece itself, and that bring to the different dimension.
Mm-hmm. But are you saying that there's no democracy outside of art? Or is it?
there is a word, democracy, but I don't know sometimes what really does mean. Because it was used and hijacked so many times. And I do believe that art is the only thing that can somehow give that room, space of participation, of thinking and critical aspect of it. And that, if we want to really call the real meaning of the word itself, what does it mean? Because it's something really unique in relation, and that's give that quality of the space and time when you're in front of the piece. Now, when you think about the democracy, you know, when you think about the laws or any kind of form of society in transition, you believe that we live in forced legality and forced illegality. But thanks to the illegality that bring legal aspect, and we invent the law because of the phenomenal nature of the legal aspect of it. So of course we will somehow try to invent ourselves at time. But when you think about the democracy itself, I believe there's only art remain.
And by the illegality, you mean like people outside of nation states?
Illegality?
Yeah, you just said.
Look, any kind of illegal form, somehow we reject. You know, but when you think the legal aspect of today, the system of justice or any kind of form system in the world is made through the illegal phenomena, so that we find ourselves at the time and we invent the laws to prevent that for the future. So yeah, it's kind of a thing that is easy to say that yes, it's something is unacceptable, and I do agree with that. However, we can't take as granted. We should try to figure out how that things can help the system of justice, any kind of system of democracy. Yeah.
And so the fact that your works are hard to decode, that that's difficult, if not impossible, to name one meaning they might have. Is that a reason? Is that something you do or you make happen in order to open up that space of participation, of that democratic space?
Look, I am not good painter. I don't know how to paint. I don't know how to draw. I don't know even I'm not good sculpture itself. To me, art is about engagement, commitment. Now, manifestation of my sensibility towards the space of time, I try to have this kind of more primordial way of thinking, of dealing with that reality, with that subject, and try to question myself. And of course, you know, you question yourself with the space, and of course that not space that dictate the piece, but the piece dictate the space. Any kind of space. Can be white cube, 1 meter by 1 meter, can be 1 kilometer, doesn't matter that. But it's the most important, the piece give that commitment to the space and to the time. So I'm unpredictable in terms of practice, as life is unpredictable. And I do believe in that experience, yeah.
I find it so very interesting because so much of political art today, and also so much of political art historically, is very overt. It's very rhetorical. You know, there's always a point to it. There's always a message to it. And your works, while I would say they have a very strong and sometimes overtly political dimension, they are not rhetorical at all, and you know I think that's a big quality of your work.
Thank you. You know, I don't want to talk about that because in this case my personal experience is unique, and I believe everybody of us has such a unique experience in terms of bringing our life. And you know, I am born in country that's called Kosovo. It's really sacred to me, but I never want to abuse the title where I come from. Today, example, I come from Berlin. Tomorrow I go to New York, I'll become from New York. So I try somehow to practice the philosophy of betrayer. I betrayed myself in terms of time and space. Now, what was the question?
I don't know. I think I want to talk more about this, the political dimension and how it's not on your face.
In terms of the political dimensions, actually, there was one of the things that, with all the respect, I do believe that, as I want to say for myself, I came from society that we practiced resistance towards authorities at that period of time when it was kind of Yugoslavia and Kosovo. Albania was trying to look for some better life, and somehow resistance we practice even today. We resist to exist, like somebody in New York wake up in the morning to resist to exist for the coffee. Somebody in Bangladesh resists to exist. So there is not resistance only kind of in terms of geopolitics, but it's human. And that quality of resistance, to me, I practice in art, something that I try to mutate and to try to bring to the different dimension experience rather than using rhetoric as a pain. Because if you see 60s and 70s, with all respect of the history of the art we had, it's amazing artists that use to cut themselves, they cut their own genital organs, and it's amazing experience like Gina Pane is a great artist. Now today, to question the politics, especially economy and all this today, I believe that we should try first to challenge ourselves at time, to try to figure out how we can give this room of participation rather than to show the pain. And so I use irony. And the irony gives the space, that room, that we can be part of it. And we can build kind of oblique relationship with art piece. And that is, to me, kind of enigma of my work. And using this kind of black humor or humor, I try to not become ridiculous. I try to give that space that people somehow can question. And of course, giving this kind of poetic approach help a lot to the people defined the work. And of course, it's open, so yeah.
And I just had to think of a project you did for the 1997 Biennial, where you, I think you painted the T-shirt of the Albanian soccer team onto your body, and then you participated in the Biennial, which didn't have an Albanian pavilion at that time, and you asked people to play soccer with you. And you were like 27. You look very young on the photos.
Thank you.
Is that a kind of participation you aim at? And also, like, how was it?
First of all, when I thought about this piece, I was still a student in Academy of Fine Arts, and I tried to figure out, first of all, because we are culture that we belong to emigration. And I wanted to make it, to highlight, even today we all somehow emigrate. This phenomena is old, like millions of years till the humanity was first time. They always emigrated, always will emigrate. Somehow I wanted to make it that architecture that walk. So there is not static, so there's not something that we move towards architectural space. You have in Biennale, you get into the space, and you're stuck. So the architecture becomes more important than art itself. So I wanted to try to see my body to move, to walk. And that was only the best way to look for the fair play. But when I think about the fair play, I did not think about just stereotyping as an Albanian or Kosovo. I just wanted to question the system of the art, because I was asking myself, how is it possible, with all respect, Luxembourg have 300,000 inhabitants, have a pavilion. India, with a billion of people, have no pavilion. Maybe India have no artist. Or maybe social society, Nigeria, are like all idiots that have no artist. So I started to question the system, how this is about inclusion and exclusion. And looking for the fair play was kind of metaphor of searching, and of course having this mobile pavilion. That was...
And also, it's what's so funny about it is that sort of the Biennial is traditionally the place of cultural diplomacy and cultural competition, and you brought a different level of competition into it. A little level of diplomacy, if you will, like the soccer. But did people actually play with you when you asked them?
Oh yeah, it was really good. Asked me the bowl. I played a little bit, like 2 minutes. And after I took it the bowl again, I was just walking with the bowl. Whoever asked me the bowl, I played. So I did not force anyone to play, but I was just walking. Inside of my bag was 2 speakers. Inside the bag, it was transmission of going one game who I recorded between Italy and Polonia. And you can hear it, Baggio, Zola, goal, but it was just walking. So it was something, was about questioning, but at the same time being illegal. And I love to be illegal.
You do?
I really love, because I think there is some quality of being illegal maybe from my side, but I do understand, and I can being comprehensive for the people who use a form of illegal to survive. But form of illegality into the arts especially is more comfort zone. But still in hand this idea that have to win. So it's not about anymore just to being illegal, but it's to bring some attitude towards Biennial itself, or maybe sculpture itself, or the performance itself. So it's about questioning,
Do you think you can ask different questions from an illegal standpoint, an illegal position? Are those questions maybe
you can find the form always. There was actually 1920, I don't know, in 1200, something like this, was when, I don't know if the name is right, but in the church, in Vatican, was a guy called Pierino. I don't know if you know that story.
No.
And he was writing the questioning of the churches inside through the small letter messages. And he was living in the corner, so nobody knew who was writing that.
In the Vatican?
In Vatican.
Oh my God.
But this is a real story. I don't know the name of the priest who did.
Yeah.
But that brought some kind of questioning in terms, of course, not as today, we can do that, but in that period of time there was a very powerful form of raising the question. Of course, that we should always apply through the legal way, and I believe is the best. But look, the legal is one thing, and it's delicious, it's fantastic, and it's great. But we should find other ways alternative way. And alternative ways, of course, we should highlight question and to embrace, but rather than to reject. So yeah.
Before we talk more about this exhibition, I would like to tell the audience about a few of your former iconic works, really. And some of you might actually have seen some of those works. And I want to tell you about this because I think it's a really good introduction to his work. Yeah. Okay. Is that better? All right. Okay. So, for instance, in 2001, you created a tourist bus for the Istanbul Biennial, a bus that couldn't drive, but that had to be pushed by Turkish workers through Istanbul. And the touristic bystanders were looking at it while they were pushing it. Then in a piece of land art, also in 2001, you carved the word benvenuto, welcome, into... 2000. That was 2000, yeah, okay. And into a hill in Italy. And if you would fly over it, you can see the word benvenuto. Then you let the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra of Antwerp play Mozart and Beethoven in black ski masks, masks that criminals wear, and you could read that work as evoking prejudices about immigrants as criminals or as classical musicians, and then a work I think at least some of you might have seen as the work Barca. That's from 2011, I think. Yeah? A boat made out of shoes. a reference, it seems, to the plight of refugees fleeing their war-torn countries through the way of the Mediterranean. And some of these works, they seem to continue in this exhibition, or they, or some of the works in this exhibition seem to continue the conversation that you opened up with some of these works. For instance, the work Still Life on Left Lane, which is this tati back there, that has a chandelier in it. And the titles of your work are always very important. They also open up some space for thinking about it. And I was wondering whether you can talk to us about why you called this work Still Life on Left Lane.
Well, I have a big problem with myself.
We all
but
do.
We all do. Yes, I think so. And one of the things, the artwork, when get that magic experience, one of the biggest questions to me is about to highlight, to identify, to reflect the work with the title. Mm-hmm. Because to me, the title is identical, important, same as the work itself. Mm-hmm. So there was no difference. So if you can see through all artworks of mine, to me the title is equally important. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I take 2-3 months to think about the title. Mm-hmm. Maybe piece I can do within 5 seconds. But because to me it's important to give this integrity to the work that can give that room of space, and that can, after that, that can reflect to the work, to the spirit of the work. Of course, there is indication, but that indication I would love to give this kind of space. This piece, left like still life in left line, mean still life in terms of we have things in life still that not move. But there is autobahn, highways that we to pass the road cars. We need to pass in left line to go faster. But in this case, relation with us too is about the dream of ordinary people, people who are in transition, or people who come to the country. Because usually Tatibag is kind of reflect to people who come from east, south, and bring their own history. Because every bag have their own history. And yes.
And I had to think of the sadness of it, because I found it, for some reason, when I first saw it, I found it incredibly sad, and I think it's a very touching piece because you see the aspirations of people, you can see the fantasy of of the new life. You realize sort of people giving up their home to move somewhere else. How absurd that must be for people. And the chandelier in itself is such a bourgeois symbol. It's sort of everyone wants to have a big, wonderful house where they can put a chandelier into. It would be funny if you had to flee your country, that this is what you bring.
Look, paradox of the life is that when you think about 50 years ago, maybe 60 years ago, maybe 100 years ago, when somebody mentioned the United States example, they some kind of have critical point of anything. It's normal because we can have critical point against anyone. I always raise the question, but the United States is made by Europeans, by us. We brought good things and bad things there. We brought slavery there too. So when you think about all this injustice of violence, and after that suddenly we are here because we want to protect. What do you want to protect?
I didn't understand.
What do you want to protect? Okay. That for me, identity is always in mutation. What we need, from my point of view, when I think about this immigration as a phenomenon, or is kind of chandelier in this case in context, it is about to share. To share. Now, when I was reading one time, one of this Roma immigrant coming to Germany, and he was like 1998, 1999. He had 11 kids. And the guy was taking, for every kid, like 400 German marks, something like this. Or 300, I don't know how much it was. In the end of the day, a month, he was having like thousands of German marks without doing nothing, without working nothing. Now, that law was not made today. It was made in different time of period. Who, of course, today, who is benefiting is exactly what the people are coming from different countries. Of course, have to change things. There is not have to be static into it. So when I think about all this kind of form of contradiction, especially from human side, and especially where we live today, when we need people from other side, I don't think we should think only economical reason. We should try to open ourselves to culture. Because, you know, I don't think Morocco have only couscous. Couscous. I don't believe in that.
You don't believe in couscous?
Only couscous, the Morocco have.
Okay.
I don't believe in, you know, Turkish have only kebab. But they have literature. They have a great, gifted writer. But we never know about them. We never talk about them. Nigeria have amazing writers. But we never talk about them. So the question is, it is about our education, how somehow we are imposed by learning what we really want to learn, with something bringing to the new education to the kids especially, so that can grow with other people, with other ethnicity, do not feel there is aliens, there are something strangers to us. So this is a big question.
My feeling is that the issue of migration, or the topic of refugees or immigrants, very sadly sort of is present in most of the works in this exhibition. For instance, that might just be me, but the paintings, the 3 paintings here and the 1 painting up there with the barbed wire in the back and the plastic on top. For me, it evokes the aesthetics of borders, of people protecting themselves with very meager means from the conditions during their flight from their home country. Is that a too direct of a reading for you, or is?
Look, you know, people who I work close by, with Noura and Kuralai, and with people that follow me very nearby, and I try always to challenge myself with painting and of any form of art, not only that. And because I'm not a painter, as I said, and I wanted to try to give the physical aspect to the painting as an experience, rather than to be just a visual aspect of consuming the painting. And when I thought about this painting, I did not want to make it painting normal, somehow to stay imperfect. I want to make it abnormal, so they can feel that it's moving, that is something not normal shape. Like is the title of this presentation, it's straight for nothing, instead of being opposite. Now, when I thought about the hiding the barbed wire, especially in this, I did not even want to mention that. I want the people to discover through their own experience. If they discover, if they see that, even if they do not see that, it's great as well.
Really?
Yeah, because, you know, look, that's why, beginning of our conversation, talking about how much is important that participation of everybody bring their own experience towards the artwork. Especially this work, who I think it's for me very important because we're talking about the barrier. You know, it's not only physical barrier, but it's a mental barrier as well, and a political barrier, an economical barrier, and we live always in barriers that do not mean necessarily just barbed wire or something else. But today, facing through this geographical relation, especially in terms of this the new wave of immigrants coming to Europe, it's incredible how somehow we look for the freedom. They look for the freedom, and to me, freedom is not concept, philosophy. It's practical, and we define through the practical means. Now, when the thing about the painting, it's about freedom of expression, so-called, and building that kind of relation with freedom, and in back that mental barrier of the freedom. To me, it was really big question. How to achieve that experience, relation with that painting. Yeah, I don't know if I succeed, but I'm happy.
And the works are titled Raw Breeze, and I think the idea behind, or one idea behind the title is that the pieces of plastic are moving a little when you walk by or when there's motion in the room.
Yes, for me it's really important to give that livelihood into the painting so that things can move. That if you open the window or door, that you can feel it, something. But naturally, without any kind of artificial meaning in terms of putting around. And if you don't move, it's fine too, you know.
And I think the barbed wire is an incredibly strong symbol. When I saw that it was behind the paintings, it made me shudder a little bit, just because it's nothing you usually see in your, in your real life. You know, it's something is in borders, and you know it from newspapers and the news and all. You know, you have these images in your head of people in Germany, especially the last couple of years. You saw a lot of images in the news of people at the Hungarian border, for instance, and this was my first association. But I find it very interesting that for you it's also about mental freedom and the barriers to mental freedom.
Because look, the barbed wire, it's really scary because they bring us to the history back. When I think about, okay, I have to tell you one other example. There was, in the United States there is a Cherokee tribe, Indian American there, and there he was talking with his grandfather, and the grandson asked, "Grandfather, can you tell me why the world is so violent, so aggressive, so indifferent, so intolerant?" And grandfather said, "Look, in a human body there exist two wolves. One wolf who love the peace, who love love, who love tolerance, who love any kind of form that's mean progress and embrace life, appreciate life. But there is another wolf to our body that it's mean, its meaning is greed, he hate, and he want violence, he do things and that." And after the grandson asked, "Can you tell me who win for these two wolves?" He responded, "Depend who you feed."
And so is art a way for you of feeding the right wolf?
I don't know.
Yeah.
But depend who we feed. So even today with fake news and making things and feeding this negative aspect of intolerance and of fear. Fear, that is a really important subject that if we feed things that it's not naturally, but it's to be protected because it's something that we feel more safe. That is mostly is a mental state rather than a physical one. Because you walk outside in middle of Manhattan, something can come to your head and done. You go outside, you don't know this. But if we question that and try to have, especially through understanding each other, rather than through prejudice or rejection, to listen each other, because there is never one direction, there is both directions. I think there will be a better life. But to me, when I think about out of the context of the painting, of that exactly what I was talking about, fear and barbed wire, being afraid. But the most important is in the back. So when we mention about the avoiding kind of form of rhetoric approach, to me it's really important.
Your work on different levels. One level is a symbolic aspect, and I think like the most obvious symbol in this exhibition is the olive tree in the entrance, and a displaced olive tree, which makes you think of roots. It makes you think of the Mediterranean again. It makes you think of all these cultures which are affected by this current crisis. But it has a sign on it, the olive tree. It says, "Do not touch me." Why?
You know, I would love when the tree will talk. At least we will listen more to the nature.
You think it's a character of the tree?
As a character, or can be trees in general, when the nature can talk, but we don't listen to nature. We will trying to somehow destroy the nature in the name of the progress. Of course, we have to have a progress. There is no question about that. But we have to collaborate with nature. If we do not mutate with nature, one day nature will go against us. When I think about that piece, I wanted especially to put that, hide it, in terms, as soon as you get out, you get in, they say, "Do not touch me, don't touch me." And it's not in proper English, don't, D-O-N-T, it was just don't, just ordering you to not touch me. Of course, the piece is questioning, is the tree belong to me? Or is nature belong to us? Or do I possess this? So, yeah, it's a big question. Of course, it can be a bit political too as well. But it's about the beautiful tree.
And there's also some irony in it, because obviously the tree has been touched, it has been unearthed and put into this gallery space.
But he asked me not to touch anymore. Because it was touched, but no more
Enough
touching.
Enough touching. And another level I find is sort of, this haunting aspect that I mentioned before. And I have to think of the parasol on the second level, which you covered with cement.
Dry shade, yeah.
Yeah, dry shade. And it looks like a parasol from Hiroshima or some other like war-torn, deserted place. You immediately have to think of all these movies you've seen, all these catastrophe movies and catastrophic movies. And, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, the title of the show, I titled Shadow of Curls. Because, the curls, I don't know how it's in German to translate curls. I asked Julia the other day, but she said there is no word curls that can be defined in German language. Terms, it's just for the hair.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know that. But, however, the shadow of the curls mean, about complexity. Because we're questioning things that, especially in terms on the politic itself, and economy, and any kind of form, they exist, even in political speeches, or that exists shadow. There exists shadow. And to me, that piece, especially, there is a place, you have parasol, but there is no shadow. That experience with that piece, especially, and of course with the shadow in this case, with barbed wire, or shadow meaning of the desert in a whole, or dancing in the dark. It is about that shadow of that experience that you bring that and discover. Because there is nothing to understand. It is about experience that give to the people that shadow can be complete. And Parasol especially question that disaster, question that looking for that shadow. That when you think about the people who are especially faced with so much heat in North Africa, for them the trees are the most gift things that can stay in the shadow to survive. You know, and now paradoxically you have the parasol that have no shade. Yeah, it's a dry.
It also made me think of the aspirations of people who might have brought a tati back from their home, and you know, the aspiration for having a vacation that never comes really. We don't have that much time left, but I would like to ask you about your work for the Kosovo pavilion at this year's Biennial. And it partly consisted of a telephone booth made from wood, an old-fashioned telephone, and a lost and found sign. And in addition to that, a town crier went through the arsenale and called out the names of 1,664 people who went missing in the Kosovo War in 1999 and who are still unaccounted for. And it seemed to invoke the plight of all those people still waiting for their phone call. A phone call from their missing loved ones, or a call informing them about their whereabouts. And I want to mention that because it's such a strong piece, also another haunting piece. But my question for you is a biographical question. Because in an interview a few years back you said, "My artistic research and practice is rooted in my experience of growing up in social and political injustice." How you think have those historical and those biographical events for you shaped your artistic practice? It's a big question. But
yeah, of course. When I was 14, 15 years old, I was living in Pristina, the capital of Kosovo, and I was a kid, like playing in those streets and stuff. And we was playing, and suddenly somebody was throwing some stones in the police car. It was by the government of the period of time, the Serbian government, and we was arrested. Kind of 4, 5, 6 kids. Whatever, 2 days in prison, 3 days in prison. It was an incredible good experience, but without any put into weight into it, because it's just my personal experience. And now, coming back after, trying to challenge myself in terms of the time, 2000, I made a piece in a police station in Ghent, transform police station in a very luxury place that police can work.
And there was the waiting room of a
the waiting room
police
station.
Yeah.
And I had some books in philosophy, humanity. There was some orange juice. There was some water. Chandelier, beautiful one, functional carpet, beautiful. So people, when came to the police station, could not understand what this is, how to lobby or what. The police had to call them, because really was something kind of visual, like it was very strong emotion, changing environment. There I understood that the power of the art, how can work with institution and build kind of new ideology together, rather than rejection. So again, I was kid, passing through a beautiful experience, bad experience was experience, and making the authority feeling embraced rather than reject them. They love the peace. And the police station wanted me to transform 3 floors of police station in organic sculpture.
No.
Yes, the main headquarters.
But you didn't do it, right? You only did the waiting room.
Well, for me it was a really beautiful challenge because it was fantastic, kind of, and maturity of the institution itself to do something with an artist that now can change image of police, Minister of Internal, because you understand, the police are like your brothers and your sisters. They're somebody who do the job. They're bound by the law. They do that, and that's it. They're humans. So to bring that humanity to something magic with them, to me, is really important. Now, I don't want to talk about Pasolini when he came in 1972. There was big riots in Italy of changing against authority of the period of time. And the first time he came open, and the police was using brutality against the students, and he finally said, I have compassion for the police, for the Minister of Interior, not for the young students, because the young student was the kids of bourgeois, but who are really having to say that was really victim was police people, carabinieri, who was coming from the south, who was really from ordinary family, really poor. So this shift incredibly in terms of relation with somebody who is so respected by opinions and embracing and defending authorities. Now in this context, I was ready to make organic sculpture into it, so to be kind of, when you go to see art, you look kind of for the truth, and you go to see the truth in the police station. No? But I was not ready to invest, because the director of the museum, Jan Hout, asked him, that is great, but you have to buy.
And they didn't want to pay?
Yeah, because they said there is nothing too free. You have to understand what the art can do for the institution. And so that you should start to rethink, and we can refresh bar and stuff. So why I'm mentioning that? What shaped me, what today, it is experience. And what I think when I'm born, where I'm born is sacred to me. However, I try to mutate myself with where I am. Like, I live in New York now, and I think to me it's such incredible city of learning. And as a society is, multi-ethnic, and especially in terms of thinking that people, 90% wake up in the morning, struggle to survive. It's a dynamic city. And to me, to grow up in the city, it's not about art. It is about people and tradition and culture.
It was a very different answer from the one I expected.
Yeah.
Before you have the possibility to ask Sislej questions, and before we end this talk, I have a request for you. A few years back at the Metropolitan Museum in New York, you were invited to give an artist talk, and instead of talking about you and your work, you read a letter from your mother. And I was wondering whether you could read that letter for us, because it's really touching.
Thank you. Okay, I want to prepare you. The letter, it's about 2 hours. So
it's about 2 hours?
2 hours to read.
Okay.
So.
But we only read a little part of it.
No, I'm just joking. It's just little. Because always mothers speak very little.
I'm sorry, what?
The mothers speak very little.
Okay.
But they bring any kind of philosophy of life and confirm that. So, Sislej was a very nice and quiet child. He was always on good behavior and followed all the rules at home and at school. He was on time for bed every night, and his teeth were white as the snow. He played nicely the piano and flute. On the weekends, we took him out horse riding before his Boy Scout activities. He also shows great interest in the French language. Sislej has always been very helpful to others. While his friends went to play outside after school, Sislej decided to donate his after-school time to help elderly people with their household duties. His annual treat was to always to go skiing in the winter with his parent and siblings, mother.
Thanks, Sislej, for coming and talking to us, and thank you all for coming. And yes, thanks.
Thank you.
It was good.